So good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome members of the commission and guests that are joining us today for our third annual TPC meeting. Since reinvigorating this process, I am really pleased to work with the commission. It's those opportunities for us to work across party lines, to work with the executive and legislative branches of government to advance the public's interests all across the state of Wisconsin. Commission makes important decisions that impact the movement of people and commerce, the movement and the safety, obviously, of the traveling public and the continued economic growth of our state. So thanks for all your work. Thanks for being here today. And so will the Commission Secretary please call the roll?
So for the commission members participating virtually this year, please remember to unmute when responding. I will now begin the roll call. Governor Evers?
Here.
Senator Coles?
Here.
Senator Markline?
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Carpenter?
Here.
Senator Petrowski?
Here.
Senator Bewley?
Here.
Representative Krug?
Here.
Representative Spiros? Representative Spreitzer?
Here.
Representative Reamer?
Here.
Representative Plummer?
Here.
Commissioner Serby?
Here.
Director Bussler?
Here.
Executive Director Hannah?
Here.
Secretary Thompson?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's, we need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So a little bit of an overview. Since we dedicated time at past meetings detailing responsibilities of TPC and the important role that major projects play in maintaining a safe and efficient and well-maintained highway system, but we'll not be talking about those issues today. Instead, WISDOT will be providing a brief program financial status overview, followed by an update of active construction projects. Then today's primary focus will be on the Lacrosse major project. As you've seen in your binder material, WISDOT is recommending a new approach to address the needs of the US 53 Lacrosse Corridor major project. Obviously, it's an important project that has not proceeded to construction since being enumerated over 20 years ago. And believe that new direction is needed, and the Department of Transportation has a recommendation for you that will address corridor needs in a manner consistent with the needs of the community. The department will also provide an informational presentation on the I-794 Lake Interchange study in Milwaukee County. While no TPC decisions are required regarding this potential project, I think it's important for the staff field important that the TPC know about the potentially large projects like this, as TPC feedback and guidance is always considered helpful. Lastly, I want to recognize WISDOT's positive program results demonstrated in August 2021 TPC report, which showed a total cost estimate for all construction projects, majors and southeast mega projects. While we cannot always predict future cost increases, I'm pleased that statewide projects have generally been delivered on time and under budget. While other states have seen their costs increase, WISDOT continues to look for every opportunity to deliver projects for most cost effectively. The recommendation that will be made today will show WISDOT's commitment to maintaining that state system in a responsible manner. A last bit of housekeeping, my schedule is not going to allow me to stay the duration of this meeting. And without objection, I'd like to designate Deputy Chief of Staff Barb Worcester as my proxy. And anybody have any problems with that? Let's hear it now. Barb, you will be out. At this time, let's turn it over to Secretary Thompson.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it very much. And good afternoon to all the members of the committee. Very excited that this is our third meeting of the Transportation Projects Commission in 3 years. I think it's very important that we're at regular order and that we've been going through this process. The work that you have all done over the last several years, I think truly has positioned us in Wisconsin to be well positioned to receive the federal money that is going to be coming as part of the federal infrastructure package that's going to be coming because of the work that we've been doing. I think we've got projects farther along, engineering, preliminary issues that are being taken care of that'll put us in a good position to be able to absorb some federal money that comes on top of the increase in state revenue that we all were able to agree upon the budget before last. So I think that puts us in very, very good position. Now, this commission is designed and is statutorily called for to review major projects because of their significance, both monetarily and because of the impact that projects like this have, both positively and at times negatively on a community, and that we look at those as judiciously as we possibly can. So, you know, the fact that you all have been meeting, this is our third meeting, you've been taking action. I believe we have been moving through these projects, and that doesn't mean that all we've been doing is simply moving forward a bunch more major projects or expansion projects. If we review the action you've taken over the last 2 years, we have moved some significant things forward. We've also changed the scope of them to, I believe, right-size them, and we've decided that there's other better ways to move forward on others. So if we look at the 2 projects that were approved for construction last year, one is the Wisconsin River Bridges, which is replacing key bridges on the 3990-94 corridor near the Dells that is essential to agriculture, freight hauling, and business travel, as well as obviously tourism and recreational travel. And then US 51 from Stoughton to McFarland, which again had started out as an expansion project. We looked at a way that we thought we could meet the needs without expanding the lanes, but making the improvements in kind there. But because of the cost, it was still a high cost major, and you've approved that and moved that forward. But at the same time, there were 5 studies that had been out there that we've decided not to move forward, that you took action on, not to move forward under the majors program, not because the needs were not there significantly, but we believe that there's other more prudent ways that we possibly could address those needs than necessarily capacity or moving forward on the major program. So I think that's significant that we've gone through and cleared that. The one action item today that the governor talked about, I think is much like that. This is a project in the Lacrosse area that has been out there for decades. The need that was identified almost 30 years ago is real, but we think there's an alternative that can solve it that's different than the one that fits the community needs that we're going to be proposing today. And then finally, I would just like to say as well that during these last 2 years with the pandemic, one of the things I think we at the department are most proud of is coming off that first budget where we all did come to an agreement on increasing revenue for transportation for the first time in generation. All of those dollars, despite the type of projects that come here, all of that increase, it was about a $476 million increase in that biennial budget. All of that went into fixing what we have. About $320 million of it went into the State Highway Rehabilitation Program, which is different than this with the majors program that's fixing our 2-lane state highways. And the remainder all went out to local units of government in the form of increased aid, whether it be general transportation or local road improvement program. So we have been able to move forward on other projects that had already been started. Governor and I and some others here were recently at the ribbon cutting for I-3990 between Illinois and Madison, which is a hugely important corridor to the state. Prior to that, I-94 North-South was able to wrap up, and we were able to be at that. North Leg we'll be talking about is wrapping up. So with some of those going off, the projects that you have approved to move forward and others can do that within the existing amount that was there. So all of the increases can go to really going into trying to improve the conditions of what we currently have and looking at how we can prudently address as many of those projects as possible. So then finally, I would just say, as those increased revenues came in and we went to move forward largely in the rehabilitation and the locals making more progress in all the tremendous need that is out there. The pandemic in all of our different areas, everybody had to react and everybody had to deal with it. We were no different at the department. But we did make the decision to early on in 2020 to continue moving full speed ahead. And we had over 370 projects scheduled that year that we were able to keep all. As a matter of fact, because of decreased traffic during that time, we were able to actually shorten the schedule on some of them and have cost savings and finish all of those projects. Didn't have to delay or cancel any. And this last construction season that we're wrapping up right now, we were able to keep all our projects moving forward too. So as the governor made reference to, that has had the added benefit of the obvious improving it in the jobs and all of that happens here, but it also has put us in the position that the federal government every year has what they call federal redistribution. And if states are unable to obligate all the federal dollars that they receive in that given year, in the fall of that year, the federal government comes in and recoups those dollars that can and redistributes it to states that can. And so between the last 2 years, we've been able to get over $100 million of additional federal money and federal redistribution. And so I just think that's all a credit to a lot of the work that this commission's done, the things that we've been able to do to work with our local government partners. And we've got 2 of the representatives on as public members today. Want to thank our tremendous relationship with the locals that we've been able to move forward on that. So with that, we have, I think, a lot of great updates today. The governor told you, I think the good news, the headline is that the active projects that are out there in majors and megas that we're going to be more than $19 million below where we had projected it to be at. So that is obviously good news. So with that, I'd like to thank you again all for being here today. And I'd like to turn it over now. And I'd like to introduce our wonderful staff, Joe Nestler, Justin Schell, and Jeff Gust with the Division of Transportation Investment Management. And they're going to give you an overview of the projects that are out there, as well as then our recommendation on the Lacrosse Corridor. So with that, Joe.
Okay, can you hear me okay? First thing I'm going to point out for the TPC members, the presentations you're going to see today are in your binder. So mine is starting on tab 3. So if you wanted to follow along with some of the slides, you're going to see the same slides. So I'm the administrator of the Investment Management Division, and our role, we have a program management role and an asset management role at the DOT. And part of our duties are to manage the major highway program. So that's why we're here today. And I'm going to talk about several things. We did have some some good news in the August 21 report. We reduced $19.5 million. I'm going to talk about where those savings were at. Then I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about our I-41 project that came in the budget in state fiscal 19. And we just got last month the environmental document signed. So we now know the preferred alternative. So I'm going to talk about what we think now that we know that, what the schedule of costs look like. And that's going to be relevant because the core focus today is lacrosse, and I'm going to show you how we think that can fit into the program. I'm also going to briefly talk about this would typically, the fall of the odd years, the statutes tell us if we're going to make study recommendations, this is the time to do it. You didn't get a recommendation this year, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. So here we go. I'm going to start with TPC reports on major projects and the Southeast mega projects. And on the major project end, we had a net reduction of 10.4 million. It was associated with 2 projects. One project, Highway 23, went up in cost. And our second project, I-3990, went down. So the Highway 23 went up 4.7 million, and a little over 3 million of that increase was associated with real estate activities. We had higher real estate costs, higher relocation costs, And we had some higher litigation costs. And that was the biggest part of it. Then we had a little over $1 million of construction costs were increased. And we saw on that project higher asphalt prices and steel prices. And when we opened things up, we found a subgrade that really needed some excavation and some more select material put in. And that was the nature of that increase. But the net was a total reduction of 10.4 million. I-3990, all of the lets are done. It's open to traffic, and that project, I'll talk about the north-south project. Those were two big projects where the change orders, low change orders on the project. So we were very pleased with those projects, and that's good work of the project team. Let's go now to the Southeast mega projects. We had a $9.1 million reduction in the north-south project. And that's because all of the work all the lets are done. That project is essentially complete. And we were adjusting the cost estimate downward to reflect actual cost conditions. The zoo interchange, there was no cost increase. We didn't reduce it because we're in the middle of the north leg reconstruction, so it's too early to talk on that. But again, good news, 9.1, 10.4, that's the basis of a 9.5.
Joe, I think you have a question.
Okay, Joe.
On the, looking at these graphs, tables here, what are the actual project costs compared to the original estimates for those projects? So your data here shows February, August compared to February, 6 months.
Okay.
I mean, kind of, and if you
Yeah.
don't have it, that's fine.
We do. I just want to give you the
But I can
page.
wait later.
It's in the TPC report, and which is still, it's in the back of tab 3. And then we relate those to the original project costs. And let me see, that is going to be, it looks like page V or 5, right before the report starts with Highway 15. You'll see all the originals.
Thanks.
32.
Page 32.
Actually, it's on the spine.
Thank you, Ned. Thank you. Page 32. Okay. So I guess, one thing that I'll say on these costs, back in the early 2000s, I spent quite a bit of time in the legislature because some costs were going up and we were moving projects across the board in the program. So things can happen with inflation. We've all been around a while. We had a really good year last year. We had just under 8% LET savings on our LET projects. And that came in, we had $108 million of LET savings. And so this year, we had a LET yesterday. I didn't get the results yet before I came today, but as of last month, year to date, we're about 6.4% LET savings at about $25-ish million ballpark. So we're hoping that trend continues, but as fuel prices rise, we're highly correlated to diesel, steel, of course, too. But so we've had some good fortune that we hope those trends continue. Okay, in the TPC report, if you mapped out all of the schedule of expenditures, it would look something like this. And what I wanted to talk about are the yellow. So there are 3 projects that the expenditure schedules in the TPC report, they're not complete. And I'll talk about them one at a time. 2 of the 3 we're gonna have completed in this next report coming up in February. So the first one is I-41. We didn't know what we were going to build. We didn't have a preferred alternative, so we couldn't schedule the costs. We got that preferred alternative, that final environmental document done this past month. So we are going to, you'll see, we'll schedule the expenditures for that project. Jeff Gust is, when he does his presentation, He will tell you what our cost estimate is for that project, both in today's dollars and a year of expenditure or build out dollars. We also had, a year ago, you approved the US 51 Stoughton and McFarland job. And we did not have, what we now have the bid packages sequenced so that we know how we want those expenditures to occur. And so we'll schedule that in the TPC report in February. The Lacrosse project, that one has lingered. If you can see the date on there, it's 1997 this thing came in, and Justin Shell, our deputy administrator, is going to do the review for the Lacrosse project today. And he'll tell you, you know, back then, how the process to be a major was far different. But nonetheless, that project has lingered since 1997, over 20 years. And we just weren't able to get support to coalesce on a solution alternative. And Secretary Thompson challenged us. He said, hey, can you broaden your thinking about ideas with respect to solution alternatives? And the result of that, what Justin's going to present today, is a new approach that will address the needs on the corridor in a way that will be more consistent with local preference. So we're excited about that and that presentation today. So now that we know the 41 costs and we schedule things in the next TPC report, if our program level stays at $282 million, and if we got if we had inflation and we got future biennial program increases to match inflation, we're full through state fiscal 27. And why that's important, I think, is because when we talk about Lacrosse today, if you give us the okay on that, where might we be able to actually have funding for construction? And it will be in state fiscal 28 and 29. There's room for projects. And what you're seeing in 28, that's about $100 million a room. And in 29, about $200 million a room. Timing, that seems like a long time. The timing, we think, works out pretty nicely. And environmental documents do what they do. But say the environmental document is 3 years, 22, 23, and 24. Final design could be a 2-year process, and then maybe a year to procure, get all the utilities wrapped up before you start. So let's say that's 25, 26, 27. By the time we're ready to rock and roll with hardcore construction, we would have significant room in the program to fund that construction. So that's the point of showing this slide, because it will be relevant to the project later. So why aren't we recommending new study projects? And you'll remember we talked about 3990 Madison to the Dells. We're studying US 51 from the Beltline north to 19. We have a Beltline study going on. We're not recommending new projects this year. The statutes tell us if we're going to recommend studies, we have to give you an initial list by October 15th of the odd year. And we didn't give you one. And here is why. Statutes that we went over last time, if we were going to recommend a study to you and ask you to recommend its construction, statutes require that we have some hurdles that we meet for you to make those recommendations. And one is that if we have to make the recommendations in the fall of the even year, so that next July, which is when the budget we would hope would come in, we have to demonstrate that we could start construction within 6 years, not only on every project enumerated, but also on the studies you'd be approving. Well, I mentioned we talked at the last meeting, 3990 Madison to the Dells premier recreation and freight corridor. That's a priority for us. So that, and we have pieces of 51. We think that project might come in stages. We would want those to be the next projects likely that will be coming to you and asking you to recommend. And with those as our priority, it's just too soon to recommend other studies. Because if we couldn't build them and they have to sit, two things happen. The first one is that Federal Highway Administration will not sign an environmental document unless we have a reasonable path to construction. And for major highway projects like this, they've usually signed them on a study recommendation contingent upon your recommendation and enumeration in the budget. So if we had a study out there that we had to wait on for several years, we wouldn't get it signed. And even if they did sign it, having something sit for a couple years, we might have to come back and revisit it and spend money on the study. So it's just, that's the reason why we're not recommending studies this year. It wouldn't be unreasonable to think that in 2 years from now, we might have a study to recommend. And if there are no questions for me, Jeff Gust is next up.
While we're waiting for Jeff to get mic'd up, we did just get a bit for our lead yesterday. We did see some modest lead savings, again, about 1.2%. So at least it wasn't up. It was better. So that's good.
All right, can you hear me? I'm Jeff Gust. I'm the Bureau of State Highway Programs Director. And let's see. So I get the fun part of the job. I get to talk about the enumerated projects, what's going on, the status, how things are going on the projects. So I kind of broke it down into geographic areas when I talk about the project. So first I'm going to talk about the Northeast region. We have 3 projects in the Northeast region: Highway 15 in Outagamie County, Highway 23 in Fond du Lac and Sheboygan counties, and I-41 in Outagamie and Brown counties. So the first project I'm going to talk about is Highway 15, and it runs from New London, and it goes to, with a bypass around Hortonville, and ends up at Highway 76. Now, the projects on the right-hand side of the screen, or the east half, have already been let. They're actually under construction on the bypass around Hortonville right now. They're working on marsh excavation there. And the west part will happen later. So the eastern parts is expected to be open in late 2023. And that western, a little less than a third, would be late 2024. Then I got some fun pictures to show you what's going on. So on the bypass, there's a lot of marsh, and they have to get through the marsh to get to things. So this is they had to do marsh excavation and work on building the road to get up to there. The contractor actually decided to build a temporary bridge in between the 2 bridges so they could keep construction equipment going to and from. And the 2 bridges you can see there are in a different state. The one on the left, you can see the green rebar, so it's getting ready to be poured. The one on the right has already been poured, and it's covered and getting cured right now. So that's where they are on that project. This is just another picture of a grading operation. So we're actually looking at County Trunk M and Mass Street up here. So you can see the contractors filling in dirt. You can see the bulldozer and the 6-wheel truck bringing in materials. And we're doing a good job with the environment. You can see that as they get the fills up, they already have the topsoil back on, erosion mat on, and vegetation is already growing. So we're doing what we can to minimize the impact. The next project I'm going to talk about is Highway 23 from Highway 67 to Highway 41. So this is adding from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. And as of today, from County W to the east has already been opened. So that's 12 of the 19 miles are opened up and ready to go. And we're working on the other part of the project right now. And this project does include a new interchange at G and at UU. So I have a picture here, and this is kind of showing where we're building the roundabout. people are liking roundabouts a little bit more now, but it was under construction. And to make this work, we had to build a temporary bypass. This is an Aurora healthcare unit over here. So we needed to get people to and from the healthcare unit at all times, keeping things open. And we were able to do that by building this temporary road around while we built the roundabout. Now this has already been removed, but it works for that. And we just couldn't detour this route. You had to keep it open at all times. So that's kind of what we did there. And that's 151 in the background. So here's another example of what's going on here. You can see there's the interchange up above there. And to get access, sometimes when you're building more of a freeway type facility, you have to take some access away. So the local street's tied in and ties up there. This next road is the Old Plank Trail bike and pedestrian trail. That's going there. And just to show you we're cost conscious, you can see the 2 lanes of traffic and one is black and one is white. So normally on a lot of these major projects, you'd be building everything brand new. But what we did here is we had some life left in the existing lanes. So the westbound lanes are blacktop because we found we could just resurface it and get more life out of it. So there's only new lanes in the eastbound direction. So we're doing what we can to maximize the life of the roadways that we have.
Question for you, Jeff.
Yep.
Can I ask you that blacktop is, what's underneath that? Is that concrete or blacktop underneath?
I'm pretty sure it's blacktop underneath, but I don't know all the layers on that. Yeah. Tom, do you know?
It's concrete underneath.
Concrete underneath.
So do we know what the long-term effect of that is, going blacktop over concrete?
Yes, we do. We do life cycle analysis to make sure we do the right treatments at the right time.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So the next project I have is I-41. So this project is 23 miles long and runs from Highway 96 in Appleton to County Trunk F in De Pere. And there's a total of 12 interchanges within that corridor. We're reconstructing 7 of them, one being the one at the 441-41 system interchange, and one new proposed interchange just south of County Trunk Highway F. That's for the Southern Bridge corridor. And the other interchanges are only getting ramp work done. So this project was just enumerated in the 19 to 21 budget. We just, as Joe had mentioned earlier, we just had a finding of no significant impact from the environmental document. And there will be beginning final design in January of 2022. And we anticipate construction to begin in 2025 or 2026. And what I have here is the newest information. Once we get the environmental document done, we know what the project is, and we can get a good first estimate. And so this will be in the February TPC report. The estimated total project cost of this project is $1,063,021. And in a year of expenditure dollars, it's $1,255,000,000. All right, the next project I'm going to talk about are in the Southeast region. We have 2 major projects and 2 Southeast Freeway mega projects. The major projects are Highway 50 in Kenosha County, I-43 in Milwaukee and Ozaukee counties, the north leg of the Zoo Interchange in Milwaukee County, and I-94 east-west in Milwaukee County. First project I'm going to talk about is Highway 50, and this is currently under construction. It's kind of in an urban area. So they're under construction this year in 21, project will be 21, and the other half in 22. Everything will be opened up by the end of 22. There may be some cleanup work left in 23, but the main lines will be open to traffic. And I have some nice pictures of this. This is a mechanically stabilized earth wall. That's for abutments for a railroad underpass. We have, this is a finishing machine that's finishing a bridge deck right now. You can see the future parapet there. And this is some false work and overhang brackets for a bridge over the railroad. So here's a picture that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on here. Is we have traffic going on the other side. We keep this road open to traffic. The paver, this is not the paver. The paver is up ahead here, and you can see the gray slab coming out behind the paver. This machine does tining and putting the curing compound down on the road. So we were able to keep traffic open. We worked well with the community, and we're on track to get that job done. So the next project I'm going to talk about is I-43 in Silver Spring, from Silver Spring Drive to Highway 60. This project was recommended for enumeration in 2014, but wasn't enumerated until the 1921 budget. We just started letting projects this year. We had a work zone prep contract that was let this fall. I think there's actually another letting yesterday that I don't know the results of yet, but some of the big project highlights of this is the project's 14 miles long, and it's going to be expanding from 4 to 6 lanes. We're going to be constructing a new interchange at Highland Road in Mequon, and we're going to be converting a half interchange to a full interchange at County Line and Port Road. One other thing that's happening is in the past, I've talked a little bit about diverging diamonds, and we're going to be putting one of those new diverging diamond interchanges in at Brown Deer Road. So that one has loop ramps right now and has safety and mobility issues, and we think that that diverging diamond interchange will really help that out a lot. So I'm not going to go through it, but this is the schedule. So if you look at, you can see what year that all the parts of it are, but we anticipate the whole project to be done by end of 2024, or the main line open to traffic by fall of 2024. I got a couple pictures of this too. So this is just showing some of the constraints we have. This is kind of near Silver Spring. This is Port Road, and this is a road bridge that we have to rebuild. You can see 43 has no room to be expanded, so we have to redo this railroad bridge. And Port Road is one that's a local street on the side, and on either side of this is lanes wide, but because of that railroad bridge, they can't widen it. And why would a road like Port Road be important to us? But if the local roads can't keep the local traffic on it, then they travel on the interstate and bog it down, so we can't get things done. So by helping and fixing Port Road will actually help the main road of I-43 as well. Yep.
For the railroad bridge, is it the railroad company?
No, I think DOT does pay for the replacement of the railroad structure.
Is that existing practice?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the revenue from the railroad that goes through DOT to be used for things like that?
We don't necessarily track the color of the money that way, but there is, as you know, there is money that comes in from ad valorem from the railroads, but we don't track it specifically in that way. But,
$9 billion of budget.
yeah.
What's the cost of the bridge?
I do not know. I would know if he was on the phone. I don't know if he would know the cost of just the railroad bridge alone. But I think we'd have to get back to you.
I don't know. Magnitudes would be in the probably about the $10 million range for that structure. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. And this other picture I have is just south of Good Hope Road, just showing the condition of the pavement is in really bad shape here. We do get a lot of complaints of I-43 and the pavement conditions. So the next project I'm going to talk about is the Zoo Interchange, the north leg of the Zoo Interchange in particular, that runs from Burleigh Street down to the Zoo Interchange core, and that's under construction right now. And one of the important features of this is another railroad issue is that we have to build a temporary shoe fly structure around the railroad so we can reroute the railroad back and rebuild the existing structure of the shoe fly structure this year. We're working on that. I just got a couple other fun pictures of the project. So this is looking at the Miami Key Avenue overpass, and you can see there's contractors working on both sides of the road. We have multiple lanes of traffic that's still flowing through the project well, and that's Mayfair Mall in the background. So give you an idea where we're at. You know, we keep traffic open, but certain things we can't keep traffic open, so we do it at night. This is where they're setting girders at night. We actually stop traffic, do rolling stops, get one girder up, and then let the traffic go back through again. So it's just a picture of that operation because that crane has to be very vertical to be able to lift something that heavy. One other thing we do in high volume situations, it costs a little bit more, but this is a boring pit, and you can see that they dig this hole so we can bore utilities under the road with traffic there, get it underneath, and when it bores through, it puts a casing through that also protects it. So we don't do that at all locations because it is expensive, but it is a way where in a case like this, it's the right thing to do to keep traffic open and get utilities put in underneath. So the next project I'm going to talk about is I-94 East-West on This project, again, I talked a little bit about at the last meeting. And remember, it's the tie between the Zoo Interchange and the Marquette Interchange. And so what's happened since the last meeting is that in April of last year, we announced that we're going to do a supplemental environmental impact statement for the project. And it's going to be evaluating both 6 and 8 lane alternatives. And then last July, the project was enumerated for final design and construction in the 21-23 budget. So the last region.
Question.
The other question, I just want to track that the numbers for the cost of the I-94 East-West project are current based on the information I have. Is it still at somewhere between 1.207 billion and 1.281, depending on the design? Is that?
I don't think that's correct. And there's a couple things going on, and we have, I'm going by memory.
I just got a picture of it from the project's proposal.
What you had at the public meeting just a little
I
bit
just want to
ago?
confirm that's right. It's also for the benefit of everybody here.
Yes.
That's the most recent number. Okay.
That's
somewhere, again, the final design has been, I guess, rephrased as they're looking at the 6 lane and the 8 lane, correct? So the timeline sort of hints that it might have been finalized by July.
Oh,
But
no.
the point for April still stands, correct? They're
Yeah, no,
still
so
looking at
they're
various options.
Yeah, it does seem a little odd to me also, the timing, the way you say it, because you're right, it was enumerated so we can work on it. And no matter which alternative is, we can go forward and construct. But we're starting and going to complete this environmental process, which is going to determine what the actual scope is.
Okay, and somewhere between 1.207, 1.281 billion remains.
Yeah, what was
the
at
cost
that,
of the project.
at that meeting that you were at will be the number.
I want to ask Bob, assuming if that's what they had at the PIM, that was the latest number, but I would just check with Bob to make sure
Yeah.
that's.
Bob, are you available?
Yes, I am.
And
So at the public information meeting, we showed a comparison cost between the 6 lane half Holly program, 6 lane full Holly program. That Holly Road is the interchange. And then the 8 lane program cost. The 8 lane program cost was 1.28 billion, like you had mentioned. The 6 lane with a half Holly program is $1.23 billion. So not a huge difference in those program costs. It's just it's just the beast of construction. And when you start ripping up everything, it just the additional lanes just don't cost all that much more. So.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Bob, you can confirm what was at that public information is the most current information, correct?
That is correct, and that is available on our website. All of the 49 boards that were shown at the public information meeting are on our website.
All right, thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
All right, the next set of projects I'm going to talk about are in the Southwest region. So we have Highway 51 from Stoughton to McFarland. We have 3990-94 bridges over the Wisconsin River and 3990 from Madison to the Illinois state line. So the first project is Highway 51 Stoughton to McFarland, and the TPC here approved that project as a high cost major at last year's meeting, and we're working on the project right now. The project itself starts out at the Beltline, goes kind of through McFarland, through the city of Stoughton, and ties back into 3990. They're working on it now. We expect construction to begin in 2025 or 2026. The next project is the Wisconsin River Bridges. And again, that's a project that the TPC approved as a high cost major at the last meeting, and we anticipate construction to begin in 2024. And one note about this is that we also have a study going on to what's going to happen between Madison and the Dells on 3990, and what we do here will be incorporated into that bigger project. So the next project I'm going to talk about is 3990 from the Beltline down to the Illinois state line. And you can see this picture. We have 3 actually TPC members in here. We have Governor Evers, Secretary Thompson, and Representative Spreitzer here. So all at the grand opening. And on that project, the main line is all open to traffic. There is some cleanup and side road work next year. It'll be reconstructing and expanding 45 miles from 4 to 6 lanes. There's a small section in Janesville that actually goes from 4 to 8 lanes. They are reconfiguring 11 interchanges, including 2 system interchanges, one at I-43 and one at the Beltline. They're going to be constructing a total of 104 bridges in this project. This project has the state's first diverging diamond interchange, and we also have 2 additional diverging diamond interchanges. So I just have a couple neat pictures of this. So I got 2 pictures of this because I really kind of liked it. This is I-43 going to Lake Geneva and Milwaukee, and I-39 going north, and you can see the diverging diamond interchange and the I-43 system interchange there. And I actually got another picture of that, more of an aerial view, kind of looking northwest, kind of the same thing, but it gives you a picture of the magnitude of that interchange. Now, next thing I got to talk about is this is the Beltline Interchange with 3990. And one thing to note here is that right now, and I'm going to run this for a second, it's a video, but right now you can see the traffic that's coming up has to make a decision point here and make a split whether you're going left to go to Madison on the Beltline or to keep going north. And where the main line traffic comes in, they have a very short period of time, and it's on a curve where they have to match in from the Beltline, the traffic that's coming from the Beltline around the loop ramps to come up in here. And so there's a lot of accidents and a lot of problems up there. And I think the solution they came up here was excellent. It was cost effective and it did a great job of solving the problem. And I'll show you a little bit. So this is what traffic looks like today. And you see this weave merge has a lot of traffic there. And these people have to make a decision here and a decision there. That's kind of what the graphic shows there. See traffic going in. And you can see part of the solution here is the through traffic is going to be where we're building these new bridges here along there. And then this is essentially going to be a big ramp. So it's going to start in a second and show this is what it is now. So this is going to be a ramp, and you can see the through traffic going along there. So the beauty of this too is that we could get construction done without impacting traffic, made things safer, and you see the roads essentially straight there. And there's more lanes here, so this merge weave is much safer up here. And then this is a right exit versus a left exit, and there's no additional decision points close. So it's a really safe, really good alternative. I really think it's, as an engineer, it was a pretty awesome design and a change. And it was a change that lowered the cost of that interchange quite a bit. And it gives us really almost everything that we wanted out of that interchange. All right. That's all I have. If you have any additional questions for me, otherwise, Justin Shell.
What is the cost of the interchange with the new redesign?
This is a little dated.
How much is that? Roughly $60 million.
Okay.
When do those signs go up?
Just before November.
Yeah, well, that was preliminary estimates, maybe it came in. Okay, oh, you said the original?
No, the original was like
Yeah.
500.
Yeah, I think this one's coming in, I remember guessing between around.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. My name is Justin Shell. I'm the Deputy Administrator for Division of Transportation Investment Management. I'll be talking about the Lacrosse Corridor project. So this is currently an enumerated project in the major program. I have the current enumeration down here listed from Chapter 84. And the listing reads US Highway 53 extending approximately 6.2 miles between I-90 and US Highway 1416 near 7th Street in Lacrosse County. And we're going to come back to that and talk about it, why it's, there's some interesting aspects to that enumeration and why it's important. But I first want to talk about, from our perspective, from the department's perspective, we've always looked at this project as studying multiple corridors in the Lacrosse region. So we were looking at US Highway 53, Wisconsin 35, and Wisconsin 16. We have some materials that we think clearly demonstrate that and talk about why that's important to understand for the original project, as well as how we move forward. So Secretary Thompson mentioned some of the things that we've been doing in the majors program. You guys have taken some action on different projects that all came out of a request the secretary put to us, which was to take a fresh look at the majors program, look at it, make sure it makes sense. And specifically, we were asked to look at the Lacrosse project because we knew it had been sitting there for a while and we weren't getting the kind of progress that we wanted. So he asked us to go back, look at it with fresh eyes, and either find an approach that addressed some of the local concerns, or essentially begin again, come up with a new approach that considered new alternatives. So we're here today to talk about a new approach, and part of that approach, the secretary set out some goals for us. So we wanted it to be consistent with the intent of the original enumeration. We'll talk about what that means. We'll go through, as Joe talked about or mentioned earlier, we'll talk about how the TPC works today versus in 1997, because there's some differences about how projects get enumerated. We'll also look at some of the original materials from the 1997 TPC meeting and the 98 final environmental document. Another goal was to reduce impacts to the natural and physical environment. Because we know that was one of the major concerns of the local community. And then we would also need to improve our interaction with the local community. And again, there's partly it's a difference in how the process worked back then versus how the process works now. Now we bring in the community early, we bring them in often, not only as part of the environmental process, but project teams have dozens of public outreach meetings to get input. And before we get into the rest of the presentation, I want to make it clear that we haven't done any design. We haven't done any environmental document activity on this new approach yet. So we don't necessarily have examples of types of projects that we're going to do. We need to get into the environmental process to figure that stuff out. And it's our opinion that we needed to bring this approach to you, talk to you about it, and make sure that it was okay to move forward with this approach before we do that. So the project enumeration process today, as you probably know, the WISDOT comes to the TPC and we request permission to study a project. If that's approved, we begin preliminary design, and that might result in a final environmental document. If we have a final environmental document, we put a request to the TPC for enumeration, and you agree, that then goes to the legislature and is maybe approved in the state budget. At that point, we can begin final design and construction. In 1997, WISDOT would come to the TPC, and we would make a recommendation to enumerate a project. If that was approved by you, we'll go to the legislature. If it's approved in the state budget, we then had approval to complete preliminary design, begin final design and construction. So it's a very different process from the perspective of where the environmental document comes in. The environmental document under the old process was not necessary for enumeration. Today, we have to have an environmental document before we can be enumerated. Why that's important, we think, is because in 1997, when we came to the TPC, we didn't have a final document. We were certainly able to talk about the alternatives that we were studying, but we didn't have a preferred alternative. We didn't have an approved alternative because that record of decision came later. So these are the materials that were provided to the TPC in 1997. On the top, you can see that's the agenda and how the project was listed. The bottom language is from a project description document that explained the project concept, some of the needs, things like that. There's a study area map here on the right. Some things to take note of, as I was saying earlier, even at the TPC, we were talking about this project as a project that included US 53, 35, and 16. We were trying to look at congestion on all the major north-south routes in the region and come up with a holistic approach to addressing those needs. We can also see we're talking about crashes and crash rates along with congestion. So we were concerned about safety. And then inherent, I think, in any large project like this, we're always looking at pavement and structure condition, and we want to maintain a state of good repair. So those are really the three priorities that we're looking at is crashes, state of good repair, and ensuring that that the project is, or that we have that north-south flow.
So project cost is 50 million estimated. How much is that in today's construction dollars? Can you guess?
About
3/10.
No, it's about 2.5. From I know from 2000 to 2011, it's a 2.2 multiplier. So about 2.5. Yeah.
But again, at this point, we don't have a final environmental document, so we don't necessarily have a solid estimate on the cost of what that ultimate approved alternative is.
There's something important to point out there as well, and we've gotten ample answers from our audit commission. Back at this point in time, that estimate would have just represented the brick and mortar construction estimate. No design, no real estate type of estimates, and no mitigation. So that is even then that's an artificially low estimate from what would be spent. It's just the way it was done then, and we don't do that today. Everything is included in our estimate.
Any other questions? Then the last thing I would just draw your attention to here in the concept, if you read through the concept, it's tempting to focus on this first sentence where it talks about increasing capacity, new roadway links, and widening. And that certainly is part of the how. I mean, that's when we're looking at all of the alternatives to addressing needs. Those are some of the alternatives, not all of them, but certainly some of them. I like to focus my attention more on the why, because we don't have a preferred alternative at this point, and we don't know exactly what we're going to do. We have some good ideas, but the why we're addressing these needs is to improve the traffic flow and increase safety, as well as look at ways that we can enhance multimodal options in the region. The final EIS was signed in January of 1998. We had a record of decision a couple of months later. In that final EIS, again, talking about multiple alternatives that it evaluated, that the preferred alternative and ultimately the approved alternative was alternative 5B1. And this is a map of that alternative. Now, if we'll bring us back to the enumeration, it's certainly interesting to look at because, we see US 53 approximately 6.2 miles. And when we look at the preferred alternative, what we know here is that this alternative was proposing new alignment going through what is the marsh in Lacrosse. And it was also going to, I believe, go on some local roads that would certainly impact some of the established neighborhoods in the city. And if you look at that length, it's about 6.2 miles. So there were several alternatives that had very similar, or at least a couple of alternatives that had similar looks, but this being the one that was selected, I'd also draw your attention to the fact that that's not the only part of this alternative. Again, we were looking at multiple corridors. So we have work being done on Wisconsin 16, Lacrosse Street. We have work being proposed on 53 on the west side. And if you dig into how this alternative was going to work, 53 currently comes in from the north at the interchange here. At that point, it travels with 90 to the west side of the city and starts to go south again. This alternative would create new alignment through the marsh, and 53 would continue on that new alignment into the center of the city. 35 runs through this sort of central corridor. That route would have moved over to what was the old route of 53. So it would now be on the western edge of the city, and 35 would become a local road. So built in all of that are, we're doing pavement replacement. There's certainly some reconstruction in there. And again, that focus on maintaining a state of good repair. If we're transferring 35 or moving 35 over and we're transferring that road to the locals, we would be either fixing that road before we transfer it to them, or we'd be making a jurisdictional transfer payment to them to bring that up to a state of good repair. So this concept of maintaining a state of good repair is embedded in the approach.
Before you leave that, Senator Markland, when you asked the question, it should have gone on the end and dropped all of the wrong point, and I've got the numbers wrong today, so Brett, help me out. He had the Southwest region do an estimate on that class 5B1 that's highlighted, what they think that will cost today, and it would be in the 400, a little more than 400 million, for just kind of that alternative, not talking about what we might do on other routes around the area. So that 50 million, that gives you a sense of with everything in what it is today.
So 1997 to present day, as we've said already, there's been some, in terms of local support, there's been some opposition to this approach for several reasons. We've continued to study this area over the years. And so now as I move into talking about the new approach, the question might be, well, okay, that's great, but why do we need to keep the current enumeration? And there are a couple of reasons in there. We think that by continuing to use the current enumeration, we're able to keep costs lower than they otherwise might be and deliver the project more quickly. And so what I mean by that is if this project weren't done in the majors program, it would have to be done in the state highway rehabilitation program. In that program, it would be competing with all of the other needs in the Southwest region. And so, and our ability to do them in a timely way. We don't know exactly what that would be at this point, but we can certainly say they aren't going to happen as quickly as they might if this project is done through the majors program. That could potentially introduce delay either into completing these projects or completing other projects in the Southwest region. So the new approach, again, these are absolutely
That's an important piece of this. What Justin was saying is that if we didn't do this under the majors, we couldn't do it this way in SHR over the same time period. In fact, if this weren't approved today, and we wanted to do the same thing, the only way we can do this because of the costs is through the majors program, if we did it like this. So we'd have to come back to you again if we wanted to do it this way. And if you said no, we would have to break it up in parts and do it as we could afford to do. Justin mentioned, we haven't done any design, we haven't done any environmental work. We didn't want to presume that you would approve that. And we don't want to spend money without approval. We think we did an estimate of this project, and this project, again, we think it's in the $200 to $250 million range. The point of that is it's far above the high cost major threshold. So why we're here today is because the corridor is enumerated. We think that there is sufficient consistency with the past enumeration and what we want to do to leverage the current enumeration and save time in the process.
Thank you. Okay, so just to move into this, the map here on the right shows all of the routes that we would be looking at. Going back to those core goals, we think this is consistent with the original intent because it focuses on the same routes. And we're focusing on those core ideas of maintaining a state of good repair by looking at the pavement and structure needs, looking at safety. We will be looking at operational improvements at intersections where practicable. I'll come back to that a little bit in a slide or two. But we also think there are some opportunities to address safety specifically at intersections and specifically on bicycle and pedestrian safety. So we think there are some opportunities to enhance bicycle and pedestrian safety. We'll get to that in a couple of slides. But on that point, we would be looking, all of the colored areas are where we would be looking at pavement conditions, but we think there are some opportunities in other areas where we might be able to increase safety throughout the study area. So the capital needs on these roads, 100%, what our asset management program says is that 100% of the corridor will warrant some type of improvement in the next 22 years. So there are obviously needs out here. And as Joe was kind of alluding to, rehabilitation isn't really the most cost-effective alternative for most of these roads anymore. So this approach allows us to get to those roads faster, and it allows us to do it more cost-effectively. Some quick pictures of some of the infrastructure. US 53, we can see some deteriorated pavement here. Operational analysis, evaluations, we would be looking at we know that some of the intersections have delay issues, so we'll be looking at those. We also know that high crash rates often correlate to intersections with poor operations. So again, we'll be looking at safety. And then, we anticipate we'll have to improve some intersections, others we won't. But going back to that word, where practicable, we know there are going to be some places where we have physical constraints that won't allow us to perhaps do the improvements that we want at intersections. And so that's just a part of the process that we'll have to work through. Safety needs. I just wanted to provide you with some quick statistics. 40% of the corridor is at least 50% above the statewide average for fatal and serious injury crashes. 70% of those are occurring at intersections, and 57 of the intersections have safety concerns. Talking about bicycle and pedestrian safety earlier, 79 bicycle crashes in the study area, with 46% of those at right turns, or I'm sorry, with cars making right turn movements, 179 pedestrian crashes, and 88% of those occurred at intersections. We're talking about that just because we know this area has a very active community of bicyclists and pedestrians. We have the university there, and so there's a lot of movement to and from classes. We have some pictures here from the university, but these are just examples within the university. We know opportunities like this exist across the corridor, and so when we begin working with the local community, we'll be trying to identify opportunities where we can increase safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Just to wrap up here quickly, again, we think this is consistent with the original enumeration, that we can continue this work under the existing enumeration. It also, oh yeah, I got to it. So just, again, we haven't worked on any design or anything like that. We want to emphasize that up front. If we get approval to continue, we would be working with FHWA to determine the best way to put the old record of decision aside and begin working on a new environmental process. And at that time, we begin working with local stakeholders.
Your summary there is really nice. Why do we think it's consistent? He did read his bullets. Its focuses on the same routes, 35, 53, and 16. Maintains a state of good repair, which would have been inherent to even 5B1. And while it's not a capacity expansion solution that we're looking at those intersections, we will be looking to the extent that we can we practically reduce an intersection delay. And so dealing with those safety and intersection delays at some of those intersections will help north-south flow, like the original enumeration. And like the original enumeration, both of them would have bike tenants. So that's the consistency that we see.
Is there any questions for Justin first on that?
This would all be along existing corridors, then this wouldn't be a new corridor.
Exactly. The approach here is to fix what we have. We're not looking at building new roads.
The operational improvements would really come at the intersection improvements. Senator?
Yeah, thank you. So, you brought up the original enumeration. I didn't keep track here, but awesome. And I guess I'm just curious, does the department have any hesitancy about proceeding on this? I'm assuming your legal beagles looked at this and feel comfortable with that it fits the statutes.
That's a great question, Senator, and I asked the same thing, and we have looked at it, and I think we are comfortable with that. As Justin pointed out, the only kind of major that existed in 97 was the one that had the expansion component. We didn't get in, the high cost major statutes didn't come in till after that. But we do believe it still meets the intent. It's not the same alternative that was chosen before, but what was trying to be solved with that alternative remains the same. Bless you. And so we believe that it does meet that criteria. Yeah. Okay. If I don't want to force discussion, if not, I've got a proposed motion I could read if somebody wanted to make them second. So this time, can we have a motion to approve the department to continue using the existing enumeration of chapter 84.013 sub 3 sub AE to study new alternatives addressing safety, congestion, and maintaining a state of good repair on US 53, Wisconsin 35, and Wisconsin 16 in Lacrosse County. Senator Petrowski, seconded by Mark Servey. Any more discussion on that?
Have you heard, and we've got a couple letters of support locally. Do you anticipate any local opposition And obviously they go through your.
Right, we'll still have to go through that. But we did try to work to do some briefing with some of the groups that had raised some of the most significant opposition before. And I think it was universally supported by those groups, yeah. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then finally, I know we're running tight on time. I know there's building commission coming up too, so we'll keep this quick, but we did want to, again, as we talked about the Lake Interchange, this isn't necessarily that fits in the typical coming before this committee, but we do just want you to have sort of 360 view of high cost issues that are out there. So Jeff, if you want to give a brief overview of this.
All right, so the I-94 Lake Interchange in Milwaukee County. Okay, so just show where this is. It's kind of between the Marquette Interchange and the Hohen Bridge. You can see the highlighted areas where the Lake Interchange is. And originally, this Lake Interchange area was part of the Marquette Interchange, and it wasn't quite ready to be done then. So we got more life out of it, so we held off then. And it was originally part of the scope of the Hohen Bridge. And we did actually do some work in some of this area with the Hohen Bridge, but we could hold off. But now is the time that we need to do something with this lakefront interchange. And we talk about it as being a bridge project, but it's really multiple bridges. There's 28 bridge units, and all but one of them were built in 74, 75. The majority of bridges are box girder type. So what does that mean? I'll show you in just a second. And the design for this type of structure, when it was built, is only 50 years. What we're designing today gets you more life, but this type of bridge was only designed for a 50-year service life, and we're already at an average age of 46 years. So this just kind of shows you what a box girder looks like. See how it's shaped like a box? So you can't take the top off and redeck it. You can overlay it, but you can't redeck it. So there really is not many options left, and it just needs to be redone. So I have some pictures here. These are the shiplap joints, and you can see some of the deterioration. Some of these pictures look kind of scary when you go through. You see the deterioration at the joints. These are some surface strains coming through. Some of the box girders don't look in the best of shape. Here's a shiplap joint bearing that's not lined right, some exposed rebar. Looking at these, you might get kind of scared about it, but we're going to assure you that we inspect this bridge often, and it is structurally sound. It's not a fracture critical bridge, but just the past rehabilitation treatments, they won't work here anymore, and we're coming to the end of its life. So what we're saying is that it's reached the service life and it needs to be replaced. So what are the next steps for this project? So we are beginning environmental and process and preliminary engineering in 2022. We'll complete an environmental process in 2023 with a possible construction start, depending upon what happens, as early as 25 or 27. And the estimated construction costs here would be exceed $300 million in 2021 dollars. So why am I talking to you today? There's no action required by you, but it is a big project, so we want to give you a heads up of what's going on. So this project is expected to be funded as a high-cost bridge project. And the only other project we've had in history like that is the Hohen Bridge. So this would be the second project like that. And with that said, I want to give you another heads up on another upcoming bridge. It's a border bridge on I-535 in the Duluth Superior.
And there's an important piece. Jeff mentioned 28 structures, and there's a state statute that came into play for the home that basically says a state bridge, not a border bridge, that costs $150 million or more, needs to be in that appropriation. So now you're just starting the process, but this is north of $300 million, and so that statute says a bridge. Well, this is 28 bridges. Our estimate so far, early in the process, and I might have these revert, but they're very close. 85% of the cost is associated with structure, and 83% of the area in that interchange is structure area. So we think that this is really, it acts as a structure and therefore appropriate for that statute.
Yeah, very good point. So that's about the Lakefront Interchange Bridge. And then I was going to say, we have another bridge.
Just prior to moving on to the next project,
Yep.
unless there's more on the interchange,
No.
the interchange bridge. And this is Rep. Reamer for those on Zoom. Probably a question for Secretary Thompson, but other DOT officials may be able to answer. I know this area pretty well, not in the district I represent, but my wife and I take our son to the playground on Summerfest grounds, which is different than what we did 10 years ago at Summerfest. It's a good change. And so I've actually been through this area on car, on foot, and even sometimes on bike. And just going back to the lacrosse example that you all described, using those principles to look at engaging with the community about how they use the area, how they use those roads, whether it's pretty close to a campus, isn't that part of lacrosse? I'm just wondering if those principles are going to go into this project too, not just with the elected officials. I think that's probably Ross and Larson, but just others.
Sure. No, we are going to want to reach out. Yeah, we're going to want to reach out to the community and get input for sure. I think a lot of what we talked about here, and one of the reasons I just wanted to bring it up, is what Joe is referring to is, we say it's 28 structures, but for most of us driving over that, it feels like a bridge, right? So the question is where the funding would come out of. Now, what you're more concerned about and talking about, what's it going to look like, right? And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Look and feel.
Right.
And I even believe there's probably high-rise developments
right
next to that. Right? That's the area.
So we are going to want to work and get public input into that in terms of what it looks like. I think one of the reasons we were talking about is what pot of money comes out of more than what the actual final project is.
Looking at majors, but as we just discussed, it sounds like the majors money can be used for some of these.
This one would either be high cost bridge or a bunch of separate bridges.
Okay.
But you're on to something very important. There's two pieces to it. One is that the region team and Bob could talk to it. They're well aware of those high-rise structures, and they know that there are some constraints and interests that they have to pay close attention to in the environmental process. The other piece is it's important. This is not a capacity expansion project. It's essentially replacing bridges. We're not adding lanes. So our need to expand the footprint is minimized because of that. There's going to be at some touchdown points. There might be some lead movement at the end where the ramps merge that we have to do a little bit of outside of the footprint, but the core of that is essentially no expansion and replacement. So that's going to help mitigate impacts.
I do know some work they're doing on bike ped connectivity in this area too, to make sure that all works and is incorporated into the project.
It would be good if Bob Gutierrez could make sure we're on target.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You said Christmas.
I can rephrase the question in some ways. I mean, it's an area where you might park in the third ward and walk to Summerfest. I'm just curious. It sounds like the principles you all use to think about the lacrosse projects kind of helps everybody get on board. It'd be a shame if Summerfest were cut off because the reconstruction of the bridge was done in a way that, I was describing anecdotally the way my family used it to get to a playground and a park on the other side of the bridge, and just usually you can park on the side of the bridge, but sometimes you sort of walk through it, and just thinking, and I see people biking when I'm there or doing other things, and it just seems like the lacrosse project used those the principles to get input from people for, how do you use this? Not just for trucks.
Yeah, absolutely. We are already in discussions with Department of Public Works and the DCD at Milwaukee to try to understand those touchdown points for development that's going on right now at the Couture, or future development of buildings like and parks and such as you talked about, and so we've also talked a little bit about what those connections look like, And that, just that community sense that you want to get when you get down to those touchdown points to make them safe for both pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. So we'll certainly continue to work with the city of Milwaukee on all those aspects and attributes that they would like to see. So.
One quick thing, about 20, 30 years ago, there was a partial bridge failure on the Hone Bridge due to defective steel from a Pittsburgh manufacturer. The places that were replaced, those segments that were replaced, how are those doing? Have there been any additional problems from that?
We have Aaron on the line. Can you answer that question, Aaron? You're on mute.
Sorry, just getting off of mute. Yeah, so everything from the Hone is safe and sufficient. There are no defects extenuating from what happened, more than a decade ago. There was recent project that removed and replaced a number of other sections with the overlay project on the Hone Bridge. But yeah, there's no safety concerns. The Hone, the life of it should have been extended with the last project that was done a couple of years ago for 40, 50, 60 years at a minimum.
Thanks. Great. Then are we done on that one? Because then the last thing I got is just in the effort for transparency. We have another bridge, a border bridge on I-535 in the Superior Duluth area called Blackneck Bridge. And it needs replacement in the next decade. Within the next decade or so. So, and WISDOT shares border bridge responsibilities with Minnesota or the neighboring states. We kind of take turns who gets what bridge. This bridge will be led by Minnesota, but the funding is expected to be split between the two states equally. So the Wisconsin share of the Blackneck Bridge will be funded as a major interstate bridge project, which is the same as what we used for the St. Croix Bridge. And just to give you a heads up, we'll probably be updating you on the status of this project at next year's TPC meeting when more definitive information is known.
And that's obviously going to be much like the St. Croix crossing was. That's going to be a major bridge. We will be bringing that to you. It's not that we want to drop at the end here, but that'll be significant. And as Jeff said, Minnesota will be taking the lead on that one as they did with St. Croix, but the cost will be split. Any other questions on any other topics or anything that any members want to bring up? If not, thank you very much for all the work you've done. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Merry Christmas.
Right.